Peggy here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I'm here to do basically an update video because I covered this and that video a few months ago, but I wanted to do a separate video just on how to make and use baby food powder and how simple it is and how much I am loving doing it this way. Now, a while back, before that, I had done a video about just making your own baby food. But the difference here is you're actually making up a bunch of powder so that you can then just take what you need at a time, add a little water, and use it right away. It's such a lifesaver this way because it takes up less room in storage and you only need to worry about using what you need at the moment, and it rehydrates very quickly so you can have pretty much instant baby food and make it out of whatever you want, whatever's best for your child. So right here are the ones I have currently that like these two actually are multi-purpose. They're not made just for baby food, but I've got pumpkin powder and zucchini powder, which I already had on hand for using for other things. And I have a video on pumpkin powder, by the way, and the ways that you can use it. But also here I have powdered oats. I just took organic rolled oats and then powdered them up in my blender. And then here is beef powder. Now this was made from beef that I had previously canned, and then took that and blended it up and then dehydrated it and then blended it again to make a powder. And then here are some apple powder that I hadn't necessarily made for baby food, but you can use that too. Now let me cover a few things before I show you how I'm going to go about. Today I'm going to make green beans, and I also need to make some more carrots because I'm out of both of those. But when it comes to things like fruits in particular, so here I have some peaches. I'm not going to make baby food out of this, though I could, simply because I did can these peaches in a light syrup. And, you know, we're trying to avoid having any extra sugar in his food as much as possible. This is my grandbaby, by the way. And then I have another grandbaby coming. So this is something, you know, when they're here, I like to know I have something I can quickly whip up and feed them. But anyway, with fruits, in a lot of cases, it's probably going to be best to cook them first, then mash and dehydrate them. And the reason why that is because when you dehydrate fruits in a raw form, in most cases they tend to be more leathery, especially the higher sugar content like mangoes and even peaches, and it can be hard to get them to a point where they're crisp enough that they will powder well. But apples, if you have a nice crispy apple, if it's already crispy to begin with, those can dehydrate up to a point where you can powder those like I did with this here. But not always. So a lot of times it is going to be best to cook those items first, and I would say the same for the meat. You're going to want to have it cooked, and I think in the case of the beef, the fact that it was pressure canned first then makes it so much more tender and easy to dehydrate and then powder. And with that said, a lot of this stuff, though, you could just, after you cook it, put it right on just go ahead and dehydrate it and then powder it up. Some things are better if you mash them really well first, then powder it up in your blender after it's dry. And the reason why that is because it's already going to get it to a fine texture anyway, so that when you go to powder it, especially if you're just using a blender or a coffee grinder to powder it, even if it doesn't get it perfectly powdered up really fine, because it was already fine blended up before you powdered it, once you add water and start rehydrating it, it's going to be nice and smooth. So what I'm doing today is, like I said, I'm going to do some green beans, and I'm using home canned green beans here. Home canned, or your canned foods, I say home canned especially because you know exactly what's gone into it. You don't have all these preservatives and not too much salt. Salt isn't bad in small quantities, especially if you're using a healthy salt. What I'm doing here is I'm pouring off most of the liquid from the green beans, but I want to keep it because I'll probably need to add it back in. Because in the case of the green beans, this is going to be best if you blend it first before you spread it out on your dehydrating trays to dry. So I'm going to dump that into my blender. Okay, now let's just see how well it will blend with just the little bit of liquid I have in there. Well, that worked out really good. I actually didn't have to add any liquid into it, like I did when I was doing the meat. I had to keep pouring a lot of the liquid I strained off the jar back into it, but the least amount of liquid you have in there as possible, the less room it's going to take up on the tray, and the faster it'll dry, because that's the whole idea of the drying process. It's removing the liquid. So moved all that stuff out of the way. So now all I got to do is spread the processed green beans out onto my tray. Now you'll be surprised when you do this, once you dehydrate this up, how little room, the tiny little jar you're going to need for this, because this is going to take up very little space in storage. The last time I did this, I think I filled up a quarter of a quarter-pint jar using a pint of green beans. So that really surprised me. Okay, I took the bottom off so I could get as much of that out of there as possible. Obviously, if you have more liquid in there, you can pour it out easier and then maybe even get more out of it that way. So just consider what's going to work best for you. I'm not going to fuss with that too much now because I don't want to make this video too long. Then simply spread the puree out on your trays. And I'm going to put a picture here where you can see I have several trays. One of them is carrots. One of them is the green beans. One is the meat. There should be a fourth one. I don't remember which one I did in that one. It might have been more pumpkin. I don't recall. Then I just put that in my dehydrator, or I'm considering doing this one near the wood stove. I haven't tried doing the baby food puree or anything wet like this exactly. Using my wood stove to dehydrate, I've been a little bit nervous. If I do though, I'm going to have a tray on top. I'll put this, because this is to go on the Kasori, and it's narrower than my dehydrating rack for my wood stove. So I'll put this tray on top of there, and then I'll have another tray above it with a cloth over it to keep dust from getting in there, because I'm going to assume it's going to take a lot longer to dry that way. Now, in an electric dehydrator, especially anytime I'm using silicone, I never go above 115 degrees to dry. So if you're using that, if you're doing 115 degrees, it might take 10 to 12 hours. I don't remember exactly how long it took. It could take longer. Just, I would say, check it after 10 hours and see if it's fully dry. You want it to the point that you can just crush it in your hands. That it's so dry, you just grab it and it'll just crush. And once it's that dry, if it's at all rubbery at all, you're going to want to put it back in there. You can still take the dry pieces off and put them in a jar, and then wait until you got it all dry and then powder it up together. And then once you have it all dry, you can use a blender of any kind. You can use your coffee grinder and just process it in there. The thing I like about using a blender is if I'm doing a lot at a time, it's usually easier to use a blender, where if you're doing a little bit, it's easier to use a coffee grinder, and then powder it up and then just keep it in your jars. It's that simple. Now you have your powder. Let me show you how easy it is to blend this up. So let's go ahead and do some, let's do some pumpkin today. So my pumpkin isn't ground up super fine, but it was well cooked before. So I'm just going to take a spoonful of that, like that. I suggest keeping your water in a small measuring cup, a little glass like this, and only add a little bit at a time, because what you might find is as you start to blend it, you might think you have plenty of water in there, and then it just thickens right up. Especially something like the green beans that dehydrate down to practically nothing, but then when you take a little bit out and add water to it, all of a sudden you're like, wow, there's actually quite a bit here. And then just keep adding your water. See, that's still pretty thick, until you get the consistency that you want. But don't add too much at a time, especially if you're only trying to make a small amount, or you may have to add more powder to get it a better thickness. What I usually do once it looks like it might be right, I walk off and leave it for a couple minutes and then come back and check. And then usually I find I still need to add more water, and just keep doing that until your consistency is right. Basically, it's pretty instant and it doesn't take long. It's just that don't go by, you think, oh, okay, that's good. And then by the time you go sit down to feed the baby, it's all of a sudden super thick, and then you got to add more water to it. So always make sure you keep that little bit of water. And that's why I recommend using a small glass, because you can control the amount you're pouring in there. And the amount of water, I'm not going to give you an exact measurement, because the amount of water could vary according to what you're making. Now, another thing that dries up really good without even having to cook are like small, like mandarin oranges, tangerines, and I would say just take the fruit. I like to take the peels and dehydrate them up for other things. In fact, back there, I have a citrus peel and hibiscus soda in the making. I just started. But so I would peel these. I want to make some more of this powder, in fact, and that's why I have these out. So I'm going to peel these, dehydrate the peel separately from the fruit, and then take the fruit and then slice it up and dehydrate that. And then when it's dry, and I didn't mash it or anything last time I did this, I just sliced it and then dried it, and I found that it powdered up actually quite well. But the orange powder is really nice to mix with other things. So I found, like you can see in this picture right here, where I took some of the orange powder and then mixed it in with the carrot powder, and it added a nice flavor to the carrots, and the baby loved it. He liked the carrots enough as they were, but when I added the orange powder to the carrots, that just took it over the top. And that way he's getting some vitamin C in there as well. So I'm going to be doing some more of the orange powder, and that could also be something you would add to your pumpkin powder or any kind of combination you want. As you can see, look at how thick that is already. Of course, it's going to depend on the age of the child. Same thing with your oat or whatever cereal you're going to make. You can do this with rice. And in that case, you just use rice flour. You don't have to do anything fancy, because if you look at baby food cereal, it's just made with rice flour plus a bunch of unnecessary added ingredients, when you can, for much cheaper, just get some rice flour and add water to it, and there you go. So since I don't have oat flour on hand, I just powder up the oats, and this works really good. And I blend this with applesauce and other things. So since I have a lot of homemade applesauce, I've just been using that. And it's been kind of great to finally have a use for it, because we don't eat applesauce that much. So, but the baby loves it, and it's something I can blend with the zucchini powder, the pumpkin powder, the oatmeal powder. Well, probably not the beef powder, but it might be good. Who knows? But at any rate, you can keep them singular. You can mix them together. Obviously, this is going to depend on the age of the child, especially if you're wanting to introduce one food at a time to see how they react to it first. And anyway, so it's super duper easy to do. And like I said, having your fruits, vegetables, and your meats already in a powder form, it just makes it simple that way to use. You just take a little spoonful out, mix it with water, put your lid back on, you put it back in your cabinet. You don't have to worry about it going bad. It's going to make it cheaper. It's going to make it easier for you in the long run. Once you have it all made up, it's maybe a little bit of work initially getting it going, but it's well worth it. I can say that for certain. And I'm pretty sure there's something I probably forgot to say. And so if you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below, because, it seems like even when I think I've said it all, there's something I still forget. Oh, and by the way, I just thought of something else I was going to say, is that if you're saving your liquid like this from any of your other goods, you can either use this liquid for making a soup or whatever, or like when I go to rehydrate the green beans, if something I'm going to do right away, I can just use the liquid from the green beans to rehydrate those instead of just using plain water. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm making a roast today, so I'm just going to add that to the roast that I'm baking, because knowing me, I'll forget about that when I go to make the baby food powder anyway, and it will spoil. So yeah, but I just thought I'd throw that out there as an idea. And actually, you can use anything to rehydrate it with. So let's say you're making the pumpkin powder and you already have some orange juice or some apple juice that doesn't have any added sugar. You could even use that to rehydrate your different powders in to add more flavor. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. If you're a grandparent or a parent and you're just looking for more natural and simple ways, so you're not having to pay a lot of money for little jars of baby food, that you can make your own baby food and just keep your sanity at the same time. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.